Formula 1 silly season has been kicked into overdrive recently with very strong rumours of Max Verstappen going to McLaren. And this would of course leave Oscar Piastri without a drive for the 2027 season. So today what we're going to do is look at all the teams that he has an option of going to, talk about how likely it is, who his teammate would probably be, and everything else surrounding this move. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you drop a sub. We've got daily F1 shorts posted here. Now first up, of course, would be Red Bull Racing. A straight swap between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri makes the most sense for all parties involved. This would likely mean that Isaac Hadjar stays on at Red Bull Racing. I can't imagine they'd want to get rid of him. If they'd bring in Oscar Piastri, and some continuity from this season makes a lot of sense. And I think that Isaac Hadjar's doing a pretty decent job up against Max, all things considered. As for who would be the number one at the team is an interesting question because, of course, Oscar has the most experience. He's a race winner. He's fought for a championship last season, but he would be coming into Isaac Hadjar's team. Isaac's been with the Red Bull family for years now, like through Formula 4, 3, 2 and 1. So I don't know if there's a clear number one option for the team there. However, I don't know if Red Bull are going to stick with this very clear number one, number two dynamic that they've kind of been known for. Perhaps that was very heavily pushed by the likes of like Helmut Marko, who's left the team, Jonathan Wheatley, who's left the team, Christian Horner, who's left the team. So maybe this new sort of culture that Lauren Mekies is creating is a bit more even. However, there are a couple of problems with Oscar going to Red Bull. First of all, Red Bull don't tend to take drivers from outside of their stable. They have done it a couple of times in the past, of course, with Nick de Vries going to the AlphaTauri team and Sergio Perez replacing Albon back in 2021. But Red Bull have already got a decent couple of drivers in Formula 1 right now. I mean, if Max does decide to leave and go to McLaren, they've got Arvid Lindblad they could put in the team. They've got Liam Lawson. They've got Nicolas Solov, who's doing a very good job in Formula 2 right now. So I could see a very real situation when Nicolas Solov comes into V-Car, but then one of the V-Car boys goes and takes Max's seat. Because there's a lot of hype around Nicolas Solov right now, and very rightly so. This guy is probably going to break the records set by the likes of George Russell and Charles Leclerc. The current record for Formula 2 wins is Charles Leclerc and George Russell with 7. Nicolas Solov currently has 6 with 14 races to go. He's currently leading the F2 Championship. He's won the last 3 races in a row. And we all know that Red Bull love to take a punt on a young talent who's tearing up the junior scenes. There's also the issue of Mark Webber being Oscar Piastri's manager. He was like Mr. Number 2 to Sebastian Vettel back in the Red Bull days. So does he really want Oscar to go through what he went through at Red Bull? Maybe it's just a bit too toxic there. But I do think that this would probably be the most likely scenario. Next up is Audi, a rumour that seemingly just came out of nowhere the last few days. For this move to happen, I would assume it is Hülkenberg that would be making way, so it would be a lineup of Oscar Piastri and Gabi Bortoleto. As much as I love Hülkenberg, he's obviously sort of in the twilight years of his career, and I think that Audi want to build a team for the future, and 2 young drivers like Piastri and Bortoleto could be a great lineup for them. Or maybe they drop both drivers and bring in Carlos Sainz, because there's a lot of rumours of Carlos Sainz as well, both pre-season and now. But I do think this could be a very bad move for Oscar Piastri. I think it could go either one of 2 ways, because Audi in their current state is a massive downgrade for Oscar. The liability is terrible. Hülkenberg's not even scored a point this season yet, despite that he qualifies P11 in basically every single race. Half the time the car doesn't even start the race, so it inexplicably breaks down on the formation lap. However, everyone thought Lewis Hamilton going from McLaren to Mercedes was a terrible idea, and that worked out fairly well for everyone involved. However, Audi are in a very different place right now to what Mercedes were back in like 2012. Mercedes were winning races, they were getting podiums, they were getting pole positions, whereas Audi are barely able to score points. However, Audi's pedigree in other motorsports is about as good as it can get. They've been competitive, they've won basically everything they've ever entered. However, this is Formula 1, a whole different kettle of fish. So it's either a terrible idea or a great idea. And finally, let's just quickly blast through the rest of the teams. V-Carb, I think, is probably the most unlikely. I think it's Red Bull, or he would just not go to that team. Oscar Piastri joining a junior team would be a very strange choice, given the fact that he was a championship contender last year. Alpine would be hilarious, given the tweet that Oscar dropped a few years ago before announcing his signing to McLaren. But maybe Gasly could look to move on from the team if he's not enjoying it. Maybe Flavio just decides to drop Franco Colapinto for no reason whatsoever. And I think you've got a decent lineup there if you've got Pierre Gasly and Oscar Piastri. But yeah, I don't think that one's very likely. A move to Mercedes, also very unlikely. I think this would only happen if there's like a lot of moving parts where George goes somewhere, then Oscar goes there, and then someone else goes somewhere else. But if I'm George Russell, I want to stay at Mercedes. Ferrari, No, Haas, if they finally decide that they're sick of paying Esteban Ocon's salary for him to deliver lackluster results every single weekend, a move to Haas could be on the cards. However, there's a lot of talk about Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Ryo Hirakawa, Rafa Kamara. There's like a long list of drivers that all are seemingly waiting for that Haas seat. And again, it just seems like a massive downgrade to go from McLaren down to Haas. Williams could actually be a bit of an outside shout here. Of course, Red Bull will need a replacement for Max, and you've got Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz currently at Williams, both ex-Red Bull racing drivers. So maybe an Albon, or probably more likely a Carlos to Red Bull, would be on the cards, and then Oscar to Williams, but I don't think that is very likely. Aston Martin, if Fernando Alonso decides to retire, or if Lance Stroll decides he'd rather just go and sit in a yacht somewhere, but I don't really want Oscar to be getting nerve damage. So Oscar, if you're watching this, I know you're a big fan of mine, please don't go to Aston Martin. And finally, Cadillac, almost certainly not. I will bet my entire £12 life savings that Oscar Piastri is not going to Cadillac. So to sum all that up, I think the only real option for Oscar is to go to Red Bull. It means that he stays in a top team, because the only other current options would seem like a massive downgrade, going to like Audi at the back, Cadillac, Williams. None of them seem like an exciting prospect. But of course, if that's his only option of staying in Formula One, he's got to do it, right? It's the same as Carlos Sainz signing to Williams. He probably really didn't want to do that and would have much preferred to have been with a top team, but that wasn't an option for him. And of course, this is all just silly season rumours yet. Nothing's been put to paper. Unless by the time this comes out, Max has already somehow signed to McLaren. And a lot of the drivers that we're talking about here, a lot of the teams, they've all got contracts in place. But as we all know, a contract in Formula One is not worth the paper it's written on, because there's a million different clauses and performance clauses and this and that. And at the end of the day, if a team wants to buy you out of their contract, they're going to buy you out of your contract. And if a driver wants to leave a team, they'll just leave the team and pay a fine if they need to. You can't force someone to drive a car they don't want to drive. I would expect that we do have an answer in the next couple of weeks, maybe in time for the summer break. Until then, I would expect everyone involved with this to continually deny it. Mark Webber's already said that he's not looking at any other teams, despite the fact there's constant speculation that he's speaking with basically any team that's not McLaren. And I'm sure that we will at some point see Max Verstappen on a yacht somewhere with Zach Brown and Toto Wolff. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Where would you like to see Oscar go to, and where do you think he will likely end up? Because those are probably very, very different answers. Of course, like the video, share the video, drop a subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'm hoping to do more long form videos in the future, so please let me know in the comments that you do enjoy them. Otherwise, I will kind of stick to just doing the shorts. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If anyone's wondering how I film long form YouTube videos in the back of my van, we've got my laptop, my light, my tripod, which consists of an Apple box turned upside down, a book, and a toilet roll holder holding my camera. This is about as professional as it gets.